Namaste. So before we start active practice, just to let you know that today is 1 year of completion of this place. So it's our anniversary. Good time for us to contemplate on what the studio is for us. What is it for you? Studio, yoga studio. Yeah. Okay, great. Place where you come to immerse in yourself. Wonderful. Yes, so yoga studio is a place where you come to learn yoga. We have to discern between learning yoga and practicing yoga. Practicing yoga, we do it everywhere all the time because it's being in awareness. But learning yoga, where the environment is kind of conducive for us to spontaneously kind of receive whatever is being imparted. So a certain environment, certain group of students, and we are in that place, and quite effortlessly we start to, there's a resonance. So that place becomes a place of learning. And traditionally, if you look at Indian texts, we will find that seekers of yoga favored mountains. Okay, so mountains and caves were considered great places for learning yoga. So going to a mountain, the context would be we are taking a departure from exposure. We are always exposed to expectations. We are playing our roles in our lives, and we are weighed down by our own expectations of ourselves in the various roles, as well as societies and colleagues and professional expectations and so on. We are weighed down by it, so much so that out of that constant exposure, we get almost like infected by it. Like we start to get identified with it, and we are in stress because of that. And when you go to a mountain, it's like a departure from that kind of exposure. And when you go to a mountain, these yogis were not just going up into a mountain as a departure from exposure, they were also seeking out caves. Okay? So the cave would mean an enclosure. So it's a departure from exposure and into an enclosure where they can then commit to their learning and leading them to a disclosure. Disclosure meaning their essential nature gets disclosed to them. Okay, so we can put that all in the context of going to mountains and caves. It is a departure from exposure and the enclosure and then disclosure. So is the yoga studio a mountain and a cave for you? Okay, so we have to look at it from that point of view. The mountain, yes, because most of us yoga teachers cannot afford the ground floor to rent out. So you're looking at second floor, third floor, so it's a bit going up the mountain feeling is there, okay? But then the cave of enclosure, that once you get in, it is the teachings, it is the learning which guides us into the cave of our being. Okay, so that only you would know whether that is happening, whether the yoga studio is a cave for you, where you are led into the enclosure of your own heart, into the cave of your own being, to where more and more aspects of yourself is disclosed to you. Okay, so that if that is there, definitely you have to celebrate the space, the yoga studio, because it's your cave. Okay, and then we have to look at other instances in the Indian text where they say that another favored place for learning is the palace. Okay, so it's a different setup. So there are, mythologically there are teachers, names such as King Janaka. He's like a king, householder king, but even like legendary sages like Vyasa sends his own son Sukdeva to this palace to learn yoga. Okay, so the idea is, palace is a place of exposure. The palace, you cannot be hidden, that's a cynosure of all eyes, and so it's a place of exposure, radically different from the enclosure of the cave. So it's a place of accountability, it's a place of learning, it's a place of debate, and it's also a place of community, meeting others, and all of that. And we learn through all of that too. Okay, where Kalyana Mitra forms, meaning auspicious friendship develops. Okay, so these are friendships not just for watching movie and having fun, but also encouraging each other to connect to the learning more and more. Okay, so that's a Kalyan Mitra, auspicious friends. So again, you have to look whether this is in that way a palace to you, whether yoga studio is a palace to you, where you engage in that kind of discussions and debate and sharing, and keeps on developing good, auspicious friendships. Okay. Lastly, it's not lastly, but another instance where I find the yogis of the past favored for learning is the cremation grounds. Okay. So if you learn about, if you learn Tantra, the Krama lineage starts with a sage called Jnana Netra, who actually goes into a cremation ground, and where he gets a static vision, and the yoga of Krama starts from there. So cremation ground is a big place for learning yoga. Why? The context is, when you're in awareness in a cremation ground, you will see different bodies of different kinds of people brought there. Okay, so it might be the king, it might be the beggar, it might be the healthy one, it might be the sick one, old, young, but all of them, in that flame, they all get reduced to a singular ash. You can't distinguish a king's body's ash from a beggar's ash. It just burns down to a singularity. So the idea is the knowledge of yoga will kind of burn away the extreme notions of divisiveness and separativeness, and we all recognize the underlying oneness. Okay? And also, cremation ground is a place of transformation, where it's where perhaps that the bodily aspect just settles down, and there's a transmutation perhaps. So you have to check whether yoga studio is such a place of transformation. So whether you feel like when you walk into the studio, you feel like heavy bodies, and when you go back as radiant, shining spirits. Yeah, then this is a cremation ground too. So if you feel like that, definitely today the studio deserves our respect and honor. So namaste to the cave of the studio, the palace of the studio, and the cremation ground of the studio. Maybe continue learning here in all three aspects.